Welcome and good evening to the City of Shakopee City Council meeting for July 21st, 2020. Our first item is to call the roll. Mr. Reynolds.
Councilor Contreras.
Here.
Councilor Brennan.
Here.
Councilor Whiting.
Here.
Councilor Lehman.
Here.
And Mayor Mars.
Here. Thank you very much. Item number 2, if we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item number 3, approval of agenda. Mr. Reynolds, are there any corrections or changes?
None, Mr. Mayor. I will note that on Friday we did have an incorrect resolution that went out for item 4B1 relating to Windermere South. However, that had went out on Monday morning within the time limit for changes, so we're good.
Very good. Approval of the agenda. Councilor Whiting?
Make a motion to approve the agenda with the notation on item 4B1.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Councilor Brennan?
Yep.
You're seconding the motion?
Yes, I am.
Yep. So I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Discussion by voice vote. Mr. Reynolds?
Councilor Contreras.
Aye.
Councilor Brennan.
Aye.
Councilor Whiting.
Aye.
Councilor Lehman.
Aye.
Mayor Mars.
Aye. Thank you. Moving ahead to item number 4, the consent agenda. Are there any changes, Mr. Reynolds?
Not from staff, sir.
Okay. Councilor Lehman.
Remove 4B3, please.
4B3. Okay. Others? Councilor Whiting? Councilor Lehman?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as modified.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the modified consent agenda. Before we vote, we would read the modified consent agenda into the public record. Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mayor Mars, members of council. These are the consent agenda items for July 21st of 2020. 4A1 approves the city council minutes for July 7 and July 14th, 2020. 4A2 authorizes the execution of an agreement with Corporate 4 Insurance Agency to serve as the city's insurance agent of record. 4A3 adopts Resolution R2020-TAC091, which changes the August 4th, 2020 City Council meeting date to August 5th, 2020, and the November 3rd, 2020 City Council meeting date to November 4th, 2020. 4A4 approves off-sale and Sunday liquor licenses for Hy-Vee Incorporated. 4B1 approves Resolution R2020-TAC87, which approves the final plat of Windermere South, 3rd edition. 4B2 approves Resolution R2020-TAC088, which authorizes the city to apply to a Scott County SHIP Community Healthy Eating Grant. 4B4 approves the proposal from the 106 Group in the amount of $59,250 for design services for Phase 2 archaeological evaluation and for the actual Phase 2 archaeological evaluation itself. 4B5 adopts Resolution R2020-TAC092, which approves the final plat of Canterbury Southwest, 1st edition. 4C1 adopts Resolution R2020-TAC089, which approves plans and orders the advertisement for bids for the regional BMP at the County Government Center, Lot A, which is Project Storm 22-TAC001. And 4C2 adopts Resolution R2020-TAC085, which requests MnDOT conduct a speed zone investigation on Stagecoach Road from Preserve Trail to County Road 101.
Mr. Reynolds, thank you very much. I have a motion for the modified consent agenda. I have a second. It's been read into the public record. There would be no further discussion. By voice vote, Mr. Reynolds?
Counselor Contreras.
Aye.
Counselor Brennan.
Aye.
Counselor Whiting.
Aye.
Counselor Lehman.
Aye.
Mayor Mars.
Aye. Thank you very much. Moving ahead to item number 5. Now I'd like to call on any resident that would like to come forward and discuss an item not on the agenda. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record on an item not on the agenda. Have we received anything from a resident in regard to this, Mr. Reynolds?
We have not, Mr. Mayor.
Seeing none then, we would move ahead then to item number 6, removal of business from consent item. Item number 4B3, which is a participation of local housing incentive account program under the Metropolitan Livable Communities Act. Counselor Lehman, you had some questions?
Yeah, I took it off so that I could vote against it, but I actually think this is beyond the scope of what the Met Council is supposed to be doing by legislative intent. And I also think that the amount of grants that the Met Council is giving out is dollars coming from households, making those households more unaffordable. We have affordable housing in Shakopee, and unfortunately, the more entities like this spend, the more expensive our affordable houses get. So,
Okay. Do you have any other? Yes?
Oh, I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution R 2020-090, electing to participate in the Local Housing Incentives Account Program under the Metropolitan Livable Communities Act, calendar years 2021 through 2030.
I have a motion
I have a second.
and a second by Counselor Contreras. Further discussion? In reviewing this with staff, it appears obviously that we've done a majority of the work in regard to this, that it was an ongoing, our housing goals and et cetera, and the affordable housing and life cycle housing we've actually had planned in and actually part of our comp plan and Vision Shakopee. So, further discussion? Further discussion? By voice vote, Mr. Reynolds?
Counselor Contreras.
Aye.
Counselor Brennan.
Aye.
Counselor Whiting.
Aye.
Counselor Lehman.
negative.
Mayor Mars.
Aye. That motion passes for 4B3. We would move ahead then to item number 7, public hearing for vacation of a public drainage easement. Entertain a
Make a
motion to,
motion.
Counselor
Make a mo-
Brennan.
I make a motion to open the public hearing. Second.
I have a motion and a second to open the public hearing. The second was by Counselor Contreras. By voice vote, Mr. Reynolds?
Counselor Contreras.
Aye.
Counselor Brennan.
Aye.
Counselor Whiting.
Aye.
Counselor Lehman.
Aye.
Mayor Mars.
Aye. The public hearing is now open for the vacation of a public drainage and easement as dedicated within the Cretex Industrial Park First Edition. Michael?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this again is our public hearing for the vacation of specific drainage and utility easements. Help me out here, Andy. Thank you. So this is the current Hedges Industrial Park, this former site of the Cretex concrete plant, outlined in the black. This is the current easement exhibit. So these are easements that would be removed. And then this is their concept plat. Moving forward, the staff is still working with the Hedges Group on the actual eventual road layout and with an adjoining property owner, and we'll be back to you with the final plat or the preliminary and final plat. But this is why those easements need to be removed. They plan on making a new industrial park here.
Yep.
So the site's 63 acres, proposed new road, Hedges Way, that would connect to Stagecoach. If approved, the conditions of the vacation would include that they would have to dedicate new easements once the new plat moves forward.
More?
That's it, sir.
Questions of staff? Counselor Lehman?
Thank you, Mayor. The map that staff put up showed a couple of rows of parcels, and I'm not seeing that in my information here. Can we put that back up again?
Is this the one you're
Yeah,
talking
that-
about, Councilmember Lehman?
Yes.
So
The
this
ones
is just,
farthest-
this is
the
just,
ones far-
this is
the
just
ones
a
far-
concept plat.
Okay. The ones farthest to the north are currently there. And then all the other ones are individual lots.
So Mayor and Council, the ones that front County Road 101 are existing lots that would not have access. The city many years ago vacated Cretex Avenue, so that's now a vacated street with just utilities in it. And these would all be new lots. Currently, it's 2 lots. One's a heavily wooded lot on the eastern end, and then there's just one large lot where the Cretex factory was. They plan on, at some point, dedicating additional right-of-way on 170th Street, because right now that road ends at what was formerly the old Cretex, and then potentially doing a roundabout and over to Stagecoach. But again, this is just a concept plat. Staff is still working with them on how this gets executed, particularly the impacts to properties along Stagecoach.
Follow up.
Yes, go ahead.
This is still going to be an industrial use for all these parcels or whatever the configuration is when it's completed?
Mayor and Council, that's correct. This is one of our industrial zones.
All right.
Okay.
The zoning or guidance is not up for discussion.
No, sir.
Right. And I follow up on Counselor Lehman. So in the lot configuration now, we remove the easements, utility easements, and then is the lot unbuildable, or would, obviously, if it ever came back in a platted form, we would get those easements back, correct?
Mayor and Council, that's correct. So again, this is just a concept plat. We have a long ways to go on the final road location. We met with Gavilon last week, engineering staff and planning staff with the management team there. And we have to see whether there's a resolution to be able to build that roundabout that will connect to Stagecoach.
Okay. Thank you. Further questions of staff? Seeing none, this is a public hearing. I'm sorry, Counselor Contreras?
Sorry, go ahead, continue on.
Did you have a question? No? Okay.
No.
Thank you. If there are no further questions of staff, this is a public hearing. If any resident would like to come forward and make comment in regard to this vacation request. Have we received any input in regard to this, Mr. Reynolds?
We have not, sir.
Counselors? Counselor Whiting?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Counselor Whiting, a second by Counselor Contreras to close the public hearing. Further discussion? Discussion by voice vote. Mr. Reynolds?
Counselor Contreras.
Aye.
Counselor Brennan.
Aye.
Counselor Whiting.
Aye.
Counselor Lehman,
Aye.
Mayor Mars.
Aye. The public hearing is now closed. Counselor
Mayor?
Contreras?
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number R 2020-086, a resolution approving the vacation of public drainage and utility easement as dedicated within Lot 1 and 2, Block 2, Surtex Industry Park, First Avenue. Cretex Index Park, First Avenue. First edition, sorry.
Thank you.
A second.
I have a motion by Counselor Contreras and a second by Counselor Brennan. Further discussion? Discussion? Discussion by voice vote. Mr. Reynolds?
Counselor Contreras,
Aye.
Counselor Brennan,
Aye.
Counselor Whiting,
Aye.
Counselor Lehman,
Aye.
Mayor Mars.
Aye. Thank you very much. That resolution passes. Item number 8, now I'd entertain a motion to recess to our EDA authority. Counselor Lehman.
Motion to recess to the EDA authority.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Counselor Lehman, a second by Counselor Brennan to recess to EDA. Further discussion? Discussion? Discussion by voice vote. Mr. Reynolds?
Counselor Contreras,
Aye.
Counselor Brennan,
Aye.
Counselor Whiting,
Aye.
Counselor Lehman,
Aye.
Mayor Mars.
Aye. We stand in recess for the EDA, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to call to order the July 21st, 2020 meeting of the Shakopee Economic Development Authority. Mr. Reynolds, please make note of the roll. Our next item up on the agenda would be the approval of the agenda. Mr. Lehman.
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. Mars, would you like to second that?
Yes, I would, thank you.
All right, any more discussion? Mr. Reynolds?
Thank you, President Whiting. I would just note that we have added 4B, which is consent to transfer property at Canterbury. That was properly noticed. It did not go out on Friday, but it is part of the actual agenda today.
All right, and we'll be looking at that item again later on in our agenda back at the city council as well. With that, we have the consent business. We called the roll, right?
No, sir, I'll do that right now.
Okay, go ahead.
Ms. Contreras,
Aye.
Ms. Brennan,
Aye.
Mr. Lehman,
Aye.
Mr. Mars,
Aye.
President Whiting.
Aye. So then we'll go on to item number 3, the consent business.
Yep,
Mr.
I make-
Mars? Go ahead, Ms. Brennan.
I make a motion to approve the consent business, which is the EDA minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by
Second.
Contreras. Any discussion? Mr. Reynolds?
Ms. Contreras,
Aye.
Ms. Brennan,
Aye.
Mr. Lehman,
Aye.
Mr. Mars,
Aye.
President Whiting.
Aye. We'll move on to item 4A, the amendment to the contract for private development with Gone Companies for the Riverfront Bluff Development. Mr. Kursky.
Mr. President, board members, so this is our second amendment to this contract for private development. The changes here are to include the funds that we were receiving from Minnesota Deed and also from the Met Council. Once we get the actual grant agreement from the Met Council, we will incorporate that into the agreement. The developer will be responsible for meeting all of the necessary conditions from that grant.
Thank you, Mr. Kursky. Is there questions of staff?
Mr. President?
Any questions? Oh, Mr. Mars, okay, yes, go ahead.
So I just, we received 2 separate grants, and one of them was part of our membership into the Livable Communities Act, or one of their divisions. The total of that was almost $900,000 in those two separate parts, so we've been kind of rewarded for being a member of that group. Is that correct?
Mr. President, board members, so we could not get the deed grant without being part of the livable city. So that was the first piece for $350 some odd thousand, and then we received $458,000 from the Met Council.
From the Met Council, okay. And this follow-up, Mr. President,
Please, go ahead.
this riverfront proposal is, I see some, looks like some numbers have been tightened up since we touched this last. The project has a rough value of $30 million now.
Mr. President, board members, that's correct. And they have a representative of the Gone Company is here. Be happy to address any specific questions, but they have a contractor that they've awarded the project to, and they're getting ready to get started.
Any further questions? Mr. Lehman?
Thank you, President. So if we've got 700,000 between deed and the Met Council and the cleanup cost is 925, who's picking up the difference of 200 and some thousand?
Mr. President, board members, that will come out of the TIF revenues that the developer has already got. So it's basically they're fronting that cost, the difference. They're also working, Mr. President, board members, with deed and the Met Council on potentially doing, excuse me, doing something a little different here, not removing all 19 feet of the trash, but doing some special piers that their geotechnical consultants working on right now. So that would allow some of the trash to remain because they'd actually go through it with some piers to hold up the building.
Further questions? Further questions of staff? Is the developer there or would like to comment?
Good evening, members. Dan Hebert, Gone Companies.
Welcome. Thank you. Any questions of the developer?
I just have a question. It doesn't relate to the resolution, but
Go ahead.
I'm just curious to know when the demolition is going to start. I know that there's been a lot of questions in the community about that.
Well, first and foremost, I'd just like to thank everyone here and staff for really being supportive of the project. We've done a lot of work on the project. I think collectively, collaboratively, we're very excited about the project. And so I know it's been a little while here, but I think all the planning's paid off, is going to pay off. We're going to have a great project and present a great asset to the city of Shakopee and the citizens. And so our plan is not incredibly straightforward, meaning that we first need to get some relocation of power lines, then to remove the trash, then to start the demo. And so we're collectively working with the general contractor, Spuck, and everyone at the utility in Shakopee here to make that happen. And so if we had our perfect world and situation and there's no more barriers from COVID, things like that to happen, any more twists and turns, we really want to start moving contamination material in August. And so we're fighting to do that. We have a lender selected, and so we're just going through that process right now. And we're hopeful, but believe me, we are very excited to break ground on that site.
Thank you. Mr. Mars, go ahead.
Mr. President, thank you very much for being here, and yeah, I think our community is excited too to move forward with this riverfront apartment. You're now up to 175 units, is that correct?
170 units.
170?
We have 170 units.
Yep.
Within the
Okay.
Restaurant at 3,600 square feet, and then additional retail at about 2,800 square feet.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for your partnership with our community.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to say that I do have some concerns. You know, we were going in there with the intention of cleaning all of that trash out of there. And I guess if it's safer where it is, then I guess that's the way to go. But I would like to see more information I guess I was under the impression we're going to clean that whole site out. But
Can I just
before
make a
that,
can I make-
go ahead if you have any more comment on that.
Yeah, sure. That was original intent, and that was the original direction, and then we had, so there's we have to control our stormwater runoff volume as to not create erosion. And so how you do that is you have a big, it's called chamber system. And they're half domes. They're essentially kind of plastic half domes that are put underneath the ground, and then the runoff goes from the building, goes in the chamber system, holds it, and then there's a flow control that comes out of it. That chamber system is put in levee. That was fit to be the best, because it's a really tight site. We're fitting 170 units in 1.86 acres. And so by doing that, we're taking trash that would not have normally been taken out of the street. And so in essence, we're just taking the allocation we got from the Met Council, indeed, and just stretching that to the street. So we're still doing as much contamination removal as we always had planned. It's just a different location, if that makes sense.
I see. Okay. Any other questions of the developer? Thank you for your time, and I appreciate this project. I think it's going to be exciting seeing it moving forward. But thank you.
Thanks so much.
All right, what are the recommendations? Mr. Mars?
Mr. President, I'll offer resolution number E 2020008, authorizing the Second Amendment for contract for private development to the Gong Company, LLC, for the Riverfront Bluff development.
Second?
We have a motion by Mars, seconded by Brennan. Any other discussion? Discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Reynolds?
Ms. Contreras,
Aye.
Ms. Brennan,
Aye.
Mr. Lehman,
Reluctantly, aye.
Mr. Mars,
Aye.
President Whiting.
Aye. The motion passes. We'll move on to item 4B, the Canterbury project. Mr. Kursky.
Mr. President, board members, so this is also on your council agenda. As part of the original contract for private development, the EDA and the city had a clause where they got to consent to any sale of property here. That was put in by our attorneys as kind of a fail-safe so that some use that we didn't want, the property didn't get sold. So this is for the second phase of the Dorn project. So this is the phase 2 of Triple Crown. They're moving ahead, and I think all the attorneys involved didn't really think this was necessary, but their title company did. Since you all approved the zoning and everything else, this is just really kind of a double fail-safe check here. But on the advice of our attorney, we went ahead and brought this forward to council so they could have a clean title on the next phase.
All right, any questions of staff? Mr. Lehman.
So this second phase of the Triple Crown is the second big apartment building?
Mr. President, board members, that's correct. There were 2 phases originally, 600 and some odd units. If you'll remember, there's the first phase they put up is a garage, and then it's surrounded by units. They have finished probably 60 or 70% of that first phase, and it's in rent up right now. And they're hoping that during the winter, like they did the last time, they would be able to build the parking garage so that next summer they could actually start building the apartment building.
Further questions? What are the wishes of the board? Mr. Mars?
Mr. President, I'd offer approval of resolution number E 2020009, consenting to the transfer of property at Canterbury for the development of Triple Crown Phase 2.
Second.
We have a motion by Mars, second by Contreras. Any further discussion? Discussion? By voice vote, Mr. Reynolds?
Ms. Contreras,
Aye.
Ms. Brennan,
Aye.
Mr. Lehman,
Aye.
Mr. Mars,
Aye.
President Whiting.
Aye. All right, any further business? We have item number 5. Mr. Lehman.
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to adjourn to August 5th.
Second?
We have a motion and a second by Brennan. Any discussion? By
Mr.
voice?
President,
Yeah,
Mr. President,
yeah, go ahead.
is that the right date? We changed it to, because of National Night Out, so it is Wednesday.
19 night.
Okay,
Yeah, that's the correct date. It's August 5th.
okay.
So go ahead and call the roll.
Ms. Contreras.
Aye.
Ms. Brennan.
Aye.
Mr. Lehman.
Aye.
Mr. Mars.
Aye.
President Whiting.
Aye, we stand adjourned.
We'll reconvene the City of Shakopee City Council meeting for July 21st, 2020. We have just concluded our EDA portion of our meeting. We are at 10A1, adoption of a smoke-free park ordinance. Michael, welcome.
Good evening again, Mayor and council members. So this was the smoke-free parks ordinances came out of the students from the Shakopee High School who advocated for this as part of their Generation Now class. In Minnesota, there are 177 public agencies that have adopted a smoke-free ordinance, including Scott County's park system. So all of the parks in the Scott County system, along with the city of Savage. So it creates a tobacco-free environment. As most of you know, cigarette butts are not biodegradable and probably have a half-life of about 100 years. The ordinance would not prohibit residents from using tobacco within their motor vehicles when they're in a park. That's similar to most of the ordinances that have been adopted. So this would be the proposed ordinance language, be a new section called W.Smoking. And these are the 4 sections that would be put into the city code. And then smoking within parks would be treated as all other unlawful acts in city parks, such as littering, vandalism, or consuming alcohol, which are all punishable by misdemeanor per city code. If this is passed tonight, staff would work with Public Works to install smoke-free park signs in the city parks.
All right. Thank you very much. I know this was part of our park master plan, I believe, as well. And a common thing around at least the metro area that I know of. But questions of staff, councilors? Councilor Whiting?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is this, it talks about e-cigs too, but does that include electronic cigarettes?
Mayor and council, it includes vaping or anything else that generates smoke.
Thank you. I do have one follow-up as well. I'm curious, in parks like such as Memorial Park, there's a potential for some Native American rights or ceremonial things using tobacco, and I wonder, is that covered in this ordinance, and is that still allowed?
Mayor and council, under the statute, they are considered a ritual, and so that is excluded from this ordinance.
That answer your question, Counselor?
Yes, thank you.
Other questions? Counselor Brennan?
In the packet, there's a sign that's included, and it states that there's a $50 fine. Is that a fine that we're going to be implementing?
Mayor and council, no, it would be whatever our misdemeanor program is. So this falls under that same category. So it's be the same fine for whatever the city currently has for littering or putting graffiti in the park.
I have a follow-up question. How will we enforce this ordinance? And will there be time taken away from our police to enforce it?
Mayor and council, typically it's not strenuously enforced unless you have a big event and everyone's smoking there and someone complains, and if the police were available, maybe they would go out. Typically it's just good community practice to adopt this, to let people know that we don't promote smoking in the parks.
Other questions of staff? Other questions of staff? Seeing none? Counselor Contreras?
I'm trying to find what I'm supposed to say here. Approve resolution number 2020-007, approving a smoke-free park ordinance.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion?
I have a statement. I really struggled with this, but I know that this was part of the Parks Plan, so I have and we had a big conversation regarding it. So I know that a lot of the people in that group were also supportive of this.
Thank you. I think this is good public policy. I think in regard to smoking, the Minnesota Indoor Clear Air law that was in effect many, many years ago. Much has changed in regard to smoking in the last 20, 30, 40 years. But I do believe for our community, this is good public policy, and as you can see, other communities have adopted this as well. Councilor Whiting.
Yeah, first I'd like to thank the group that put this together. A team worked on this, and we can bring up the names here if you'd like. But as part of the process, I've worked in the past with the Derby Days and been down at the parks and seen a lot of litter throughout the parks and cigarette butts everywhere. So if nothing else, I hope it helps clean up the parks a little bit. I'm glad to see that members of our community are taking part in getting an ordinance passed.
Thank you. If there'd be no further discussion, I do have a motion. I do have a second in regard to this ordinance. With no further questions, then, by voice vote, Mr. Reynolds?
Counselor Contreras.
Aye.
Counselor Brennan.
Aye.
Counselor Whiting.
Aye.
Counselor Lehman.
Aye.
Mayor Mars.
Aye. Thank you very much. Let's move ahead then to 10A2, which is consent to transfer certain property at Canterbury for Triple Crown. This is exactly the same item we passed in the EDA, come out of the EDA, and we need a council approval for this as well. Michael?
Mayor and Council, exactly what you just said. This is a duplicate of the resolution you just passed to allow the property to be transferred over to the Doran companies.
Further questions of staff? Councilor Whiting?
Make a motion to adopt resolution number R 2020-093, consenting to the transfer of property under contract for private development between Canterbury Development LLC and Canterbury Park Holdings Corporation.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilor Whiting, a second by Councilor Contreras. Further discussion, Councilor Lehman.
Just so I'm clear on this, wasn't the property going from Canterbury to Doran to build the next phase?
Michael?
Mayor and Council, so Canterbury is involved in the Doran project, so they're transferring it to a separate Canterbury holding corporation that's in a partnership with Doran.
And
So who actually owns the property?
Mayor and Council, today it's currently owned by Canterbury Development. It's being put to one of their holding corporations, which is in partnership with Doran on the Triple Crown.
Okay, well, once the apartment building is built, then who owns it?
That partnership between Canterbury and Doran,
Okay,
Mayor and Council, the same partnership that owned the first phase.
Right. More questions, Councilor?
well, I'm curious to why it's not transferred to both Canterbury Holdings and Doran if they're in a partnership, or is the holding made up of the partnership?
Mayor and Council, that's correct, Councilmember Lehman, that the partnership, that particular name is made up of both of those parties.
Got it.
Further discussion? Discussion? Seeing none then, by voice vote, Mr. Reynolds.
Counselor Contreras.
Aye.
Counselor Brennan.
Aye.
Counselor Whiting.
Aye.
Counselor Lehman.
Aye.
Mayor Mars.
Aye. Thank you very much. Let's move ahead then to 10B1, which is our financial review for June. And Nate will present. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Nate Reinhardt, Finance Director for the City of Shakopee. Included in your packet is the monthly financial report, quarterly investment report, and review of financial impacts related to COVID-19. I have one slide on the general fund and want to focus the remainder on the COVID-19 financial impacts. This slide shows the general fund through June, so halfway through the year, and I'm happy to say that we're so far on pace to be positive within the general fund. I'll touch on the variances that are more than 10% of the budget that are on the slide here. Special assessments, they're negative amount due to payments to Republic Services for delinquent garbage assessments. Similar to what we've seen previously, this will remain negative until we get the second half property tax settlement. Most of our intergovernmental revenues will be received in fall. And then charges for services include community center and recreation revenues that have been impacted by COVID-19. Miscellaneous revenue is ahead as a result of investment income. And then on the expenditure side, finance includes payments at the beginning of the year for audit and assessing contracts. Inspections in buildings are currently exceeding the targeted amount as a result of the purchase of Tyler Technology permitting software. And then recreational expenditures are down as a result of related programming reductions with Community Center and Ice Arena. Overall, our expenditures are at 44%, which is within the normal range of budget expectations when we're 50% through the year. The state did distribute $841 million of federal funds to cities, counties, and townships for pandemic-related expenditures through the Coronas relief funds. The distribution was based on population. The amount we received was $3.1 million, which we received on July 3rd. The guidance from the U.S. Treasury, or there is guidance from the U.S. Treasury on what the money can be used for. However, unused funds must be returned and the money cannot be used to replace lost revenue. Shakopee, along with other cities, are currently determining what the funds can be used for and interpreting that guidance, as well as determining what we need in order to document and qualify those expenditures. The city has set up tracking codes, as you're well aware of, for invoices and timesheets related to COVID-19. The summarized data on this slide is what has been coded through June 30th. We've identified approximately 415,000 through the end of June. 74,000 were for refunds issued through June for the community center, ice arena, and recreational programming. About 171,000 for paid leave for those unable to work from home, and 152,000 for personal costs related to COVID-19, such as planning, coordinating, and public safety coverage. Just a reminder that refunds will be duplicated when we discuss revenues on the next slide, and then most personal costs would have likely occurred in absence of COVID-19. However, the figures do represent time spent outside their typical responsibilities.
Question?
Yep, go ahead.
In regard to this slide here, I'm looking over the month over month since March, and looks like we hit what appeared to be a peak in April, and then the trend on expenses is coming down. Is that a fair analysis? At some point, I'm sure that they'll be ongoing, but at a certain level that we'll see more going forward. Is that correct?
I would say that's accurate. The big part of that is that we've now have employees back to work and working on their normal duties, as opposed to what we've seen in March, April, May.
And that obviously could be impacted by any change in our COVID situation here in the city.
We have the fall rebound or trend back up, but I just encouraging trend, at least for the city's aspect for right now.
Yeah, and I would also say we're probably seeing the same trend on the revenue side as well, where now we've got recreational activities that are happening.
Proceed. Any other questions up to this point? All right.
So most of the city impact is on the revenue side. We've looked at, as we've gone through this a couple months now, we've looked at a few different types of revenue. But again, this analysis is as of June 30th. We are seeing a year-over-year increase in the number of building permits, up from 2,231 to 2,593, and almost an identical new single-family housing starts at 71. Specifically, we're seeing a lot of residential improvements. In 2019, we did have 2 larger building permits in the first quarter. If we adjust for those two permits, we're in line with what we've seen the past 2 years, and we're currently at 55% of the 2020 budget. We also anticipate some large permits coming in this summer, so we're on pace to meet budget expectations despite COVID-19 for building permit revenue. We are seeing the most significant impacts in terms of park and recreational revenues, down approximately $590,000 through from 2019 through June. June revenues do include the $74,000 of refunds that we identified on the previous slide. There has been some offsetting reductions, including part-time and seasonal staffing, operating supplies, utilities, and cleaning supplies. So net amount, we're down about $358,000 when taking in account the expense reductions related to those. For lodging tax, city serves as a pass-through to the Visitors Bureau. Through June, we're down about $53,000. Based on council approval to prorate on-sale liquor licenses, we anticipate about a $37,000 decrease. And then just kind of lastly, looking in the future, we might have potential impacts in terms of sewer utility revenues, property tax collections, market value impacts, and interest rate impacts with investment income. So we'll continue to monitor as we move forward and update council on any changes.
Question? Councilor Brennan?
Back on the previous page, we have the rental for park rentals and I don't know. At some point, won't are the rentals decreasing? We're not renting out anymore, are we? And do we know how many rentals that have a potential of being reimbursed to the people?
We are not renting anything out currently, Councilor Brennan.
In the buildings, but we are renting shelters.
Correct, shelters, but in building spaces, we're not having birthday parties, we're not renting individual spaces, so all that revenue is not being allocated at this point.
Do we know how much reimbursement funds or potential reimbursement funds that we're still holding, or would you say that those have been pretty much reimbursed?
We have refunded everything that is due at this point. Obviously, if there's another lockdown or more restrictions put in place, that would impact us in the future.
Thank you.
Councilor Lehman?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to make sure I got this right. Looking at the 2020 revenue total of 626 and looking at the 2019 revenue of 1.2 million, our revenue has been cut 50%. And this is revenue that is not able to be recaptured through the CARES Act. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is our understanding.
Now, follow up, Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
For the period of time that the community center is forced to be closed, is that dollar amount recaptured through the CARES Act? It's basically a taking of property.
Yeah, how it's worded is it cannot offset revenue, so the answer is no, you would not be able to use those towards those revenue losses.
Expenses only.
And I will tell council as a whole, this is something that managers and administrators have been very vocal about in our groups, that yes, we appreciate that we have some funds available for expenses, but for us, unlike counties that have health departments and states, for us, the loss of revenue is really the crippling factor. And so we're hoping that that will be addressed at some point in the future. But as it stands now, there's nothing available in any program that will recapture that lost revenue.
Other questions to this point? Otherwise, we'll have Nate proceed. Thank you. Nate?
Yeah, that is actually my last comment that I had, so if there's any other questions, I can answer them. Otherwise, that is the end of my presentation.
Okay. Any last questions for Nate? You know, as we move forward here, if the trends continue, the impact hopefully gets less, but if we have a flare up here this fall, this winter, and the CARES Fund is very helpful and we're appreciative of it, but it certainly does not replace revenue, and that's usually that's where you're hearing it. So, Councilor Lehman.
Mayor, you know, it seems to me that if you're allowed to be open with restrictions and safety things in place, that's one thing. And I can understand not making up your full revenue when you're trying to make ends meet and you're actually allowed to operate. But when you're forced to be completely closed down out of no reason of your own, to me, that's just a taking of the property for a public benefit, and it's supposed to be justly compensated. That's what our Constitution says. So apparently, government doesn't do that to itself when they're supposed to be following it. They're the ones that are sworn to uphold it. My rant over. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lehman. If there's no other questions on our financial review, we would move ahead then to 11A, which is our city bill list for our review. And if there's no questions on that, we would move to our liaison report. Councilor Lehman.
I have no liaison report.
Councilor Whiting.
I have nothing to report as well.
Councilor Brennan.
I attended the SPUC meeting yesterday, and SPUC has advised John Crooks to meet with Nate Burkett regarding some information regarding the possibility of combining some of the finance aspects of the two organizations. And so Mr. Crooks should be reporting back to us at the next SPUC meeting, on that meeting. And that's all I have.
Councilor Brennan, thank you. Councilor Contreras.
I have tons to report tonight. Let's start with the school board. There was 4 items that were taking action last night and all were approved unanimously. The first one was for the 2020-21 school year, $450,000 in budget cuts. The second one, for the 21-22 school year, $1.6 million in budget cuts. The third one, they approved the operating levy, a phased-in levy that's a $400 per pupil, $300, $200, $100 that will be going on the ballot on the November election. And the fourth one, pretty important, if the operating levy is not approved by our voters this November 3rd, an additional $5.4 million in budget cuts for the 21-22 school year, which the first 2 cuts will not include teachers, but if the levy is not approved, it will include teachers. Okay, and then a reminder that the filing dates for the election for the school board, there's 3 seats available. The period for filing begins July 28th and closes at 5 p.m. on August 11th, and they are 4-year terms each one. Let's see. Also, they're still working on class offerings for this school year, this coming school year, but they're leaning towards hybrid learning model for the fall. By July 28th, after Governor Tim Walz gives his guidance, the school on July 29th will incorporate the guidance and communicate the plan to staff and the community. Okay, that's for school. And then for the equity team, I have nothing. For the SDA also has continued to work with Esperanza and New Creations. And as of right now, Esperanza and New Creations have helped over 70,000 individuals since the COVID started. And then now Esperanza is mainly focusing with its 100 partners. They're dedicating themselves to delivering groceries directly to the homes of affected families. And if you have, you'd like to participate and you need the help, you may reach out to Esperanza. Sorry, my notes are here. Also, I did attend a picnic with the police. There was an amazing turnout on that. It was wonderful. And I did participate in cleanup day, which was another great turnout. Wish we could have been there longer, but we did have a cutoff time for the services that were going to be there. So they had to be cut off at a certain time. And that is it for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor Contreras. For my mayor report, I don't have a lot. I've met with city staff a couple times. I remind everybody that August 4th is Night to Unite. Also, I want to make a comment in regard to our annual cleanup day, which was held last Saturday, and a great event. Obviously, demand was higher than supply. We have it's great to see everybody cleaning up and wanting to dispose of stuff. The hours are the hours. We wish it could go on for a couple days, but with the city staff that does a great job, our partners, we do hold this event twice a year. Very, very successful for our community and has been for many, many years. I think we have to be understanding and a little tolerant of what's happening. Obviously, we had to turn some people away, and they were disappointed, and I understand that. But on the other side of the coin, we did have set hours. There is an expense to this, and I just want to say thank you to the staff and our partners for doing this. I want to thank our city residents that want to clean up. For those that didn't make it, we will have another one in the fall. And I've been watching that cleanup day for over 20 years, and it's very popular. The line starts early. And thank you for that, but I just wanted to comment on that. That is it for my mayoral report. Mr. Reynolds, administration report.
Just a reminder that tomorrow at 11 a.m. at Quarry Lake Park, we will have the groundbreaking for the Excel Energy Mountain Bike Park with all representatives of all our partners at the school district, at the SMSC, at Excel, and hopefully all of you can attend as well. We're going to activate that space, and we're going to do it at a great cost, and I'm excited about moving that project forward. And that's it for me.
All right. Thank you very much. Any other business? Councilor Lehman.
Thank you, Mayor. The thing I wanted to comment on other business was the cleanup day. Obviously, there was comments on social media. One of the comments that caught my attention that I thought was worth merit and consideration was there is a high demand. And it seems like our constituents appreciate that program. And the comment was having two separate days based on addresses, like splitting a town up or something. And I thought that was a pretty good comment for consideration. It's something I would throw towards staff to see if it's something we can do in the future. We're cleaning up the community, we're serving our constituents. And if we did it 2 separate days and split it up, split the town in half or something, maybe it's more workable. It was nice to see somebody having a potential solution instead of the grumble, you know? So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Counselor, thank you very much. Counselor Whiting?
Just to comment on cleanup day, I also worked at, I have never seen that many people. Clearly through this COVID season, people have been cleaning up their homes and basements, and that's good. But I have never seen this many people. So we were a little overwhelmed, and I don't think we could have planned for that. But 2 times a year, I think is going to be great, and I look forward to helping out again next time.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, just a reminder to everyone, we only used to do it 1 time a year. And so 2 years ago, we made the determination it was well worth the time and the money to have it to be 2 times a year at this point, and we will continue to do that. We're always looking for positive feedback on the experience. Internally, we've already talked about several things that we're going to institute to try to make it a little better for customer experience in the future. So certainly, we've doubled it. We'll take a look at what the cost might be for future endeavors.
Great discussion. Thank you very much. Other business, I know this was kind of coming up under other business. Is there any other business before this council? Seeing none, Counselor Lehman?
Motion to adjourn to Wednesday, August 5th.
Second.
I have a motion to adjourn and a second by Counselor Brennan. Do you have a question, Counselor?
Nope.
Further discussion? Discussion by voice vote. Mr. Reynolds?
Counselor Contreras. Counselor Brennan.
Aye.
Aye.
Counselor Whiting.
Aye.
Counselor Lehman.
Aye.
Mayor Mars.
Aye. Thank you very much. Stay safe and secure. We are adjourned here at 8:04.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Is there papers to sign down there for me?
I believe there are, sir.
I'll head down.